Good morning. My name is Lance French. I'm the Business Development Manager for Braun Intertech, and I would like to welcome you to our webinar on strategically building effective relationships with regulators. Our experts today are Braun's Jeff Smith and Jennifer Adams. Welcome you two. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lance.
Thank you.
Before we get started, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions, we'd like to be interactive. Please send them through your GoToWebinar questions tab on your GoToWebinar window. If we don't get to your questions, I'll make sure that Jeff and Jennifer see them and get answers to you as soon as possible. We are recording this webinar and it will be available to rewatch on our website soon along with the slides. And we will send you an email with the link when they are made available. So let's get to it. First thing I want to do is introduce our speakers today. So Jennifer Adams is our Director of Compliance and Permitting for South Central Region. She has 16 years of experience in environmental compliance, and she has spent 8 years in the ready-mix aggregate cement industry before joining W&M. The neat thing about this webinar is that we have it's about building effective relationships. Well, Jennifer has worked in the industry field on the client aspect of it, and then Jeff has been working. He has been a regulator, so there's going to be a good balance on this to see both sides of it. So, and I have to mention it that Jennifer is Texas A&M Aggie. So welcome back, Jennifer. Thanks for coming back to us.
Thank you. Sorry for being an Aggie.
And Jeff Smith is our Director of Compliance and Permitting for our Upper Midwest region. So he has environmental studies at Hamline University, and he has over 30 years experience in regulatory services as well. And he has been the director of Industrial Division, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. That's a mouthful. So Jeff, I have to ask, what is Hamline University? Is that the fighting?
That's the Fighting Pipers, of course.
Pipers.
And the fierce and scary Pipers, as you can get by their name, right?
All right. Well,
we don't talk about that.
Okay. I was like, how's their football team? I'm kidding. So, but thank you guys for both for being with us. Jeff, is this your first webinar we've done?
Yes. Yep,
all right. Yep. We got to break you in, so this is going to be awesome. So, well, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jeff, and so if you want to kind of go over what we'll be expecting today.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Great to be here. I saw a lot of folks that I know and names on the attendees list. So great to connect with you all again. It's an exciting topic for me, one that I've spent a lot of years thinking about, working for the PCA. A lot of issues and questions come up, and so I'm excited to be here and working with Jennifer on this topic. So today we're gonna work through some of the understanding some of the perspectives that are for regulatory agencies. It's good to have a little bit of insight into the thinking and the process that is going on in the minds of regulators. It's helpful to discuss differences between the local, state, and federal regulatory agencies. There are differences, and it's good to identify those. And then once we've kind of gone through that little bit of insight sharing, we're going to talk about how you develop engagement plans and best provide, get yourself in the place where you can have the best opportunity for being successful through building those positive relationships. So that's our plan for the next 45 minutes with some time at the end to answer questions if there are any. This is the place where I also give you a disclaimer, my general disclaimer about this topic, and that is that none of these things are hard and fast. These are guidelines that we're offering, some ideas and insights, but this is why it's so important that everybody think about and put together a plan for engaging with regulatory folks. They are individuals, obviously, and I think that gets lost sometimes when you think about regulatory peoples and agencies. You're dealing with individual people that are having great days and tough days. They're folks that are serious about their job. They're committed to to doing a great job, but they are individuals. So the process and the ideas that we give you today need to be vetted and explored individually as you build these positive relationships. So think about these as guidelines and general rules of thumb, but you'll want to be thinking about how you will engage with regulatory agencies as you move forward.
And just to let our audience know, they'll probably be hearing some acronyms. And so Jennifer will probably say TCQ a lot because we're here in Texas, so that's the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. And the MPCA, Jeff, I'm not sure. What does that stand for?
Yeah, that's the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency.
Okay.
Minnesota's a little unique, and a lot of state agencies use departments of environmental quality, environmental protection. Minnesota uses MPCA as the state version of the folks implementing federal programs.
Okay. So we can help if you're not sure which agency you should use and which state you might be in. We can help you with that as well.
So the first thing I want to talk about is, again, providing a little bit of insight into regulators, and this applies to state, federal, and local regulatory agencies. As you look through these questions, you might say, yes, I have asked this question either out loud or in my mind as I've tried to work with regulators over the years, and I imagine that you've had some frustration and some confusion about how and why and what their focus is. And I think one of the ones that I heard a lot at the agency was this idea of, well, aren't these state agencies, aren't these regulatory agencies working for me? I'm paying them. They're under the tax dole. I'm paying my taxes. Why am I not getting? Why aren't they talking to me? Why aren't they working for me? Why is everything taking so long? So these are probably questions you've asked. And, I think one of the key messages here is, are the agencies working for you as a regulated entity? And the answer is yes, they are. But keep in mind, they're also working for a lot of other people and other interests. And so this is one of the challenges that I want to sort of convey to you today, in that these are complicated issues for state, local, and federal regulatory folks. They're often trying to balance the need for jobs and economic growth. They definitely support that. I've never met a commissioner or a governor that wasn't pro-business. State agencies, permit writers, regulatory people are all trying to support jobs and growth, but they're also considering things like applicable laws. They're trying to follow very detailed internal processes, and they're often trying to anticipate potential public and political interests. And so that really, as you can imagine, complicates their ongoing work. So even under the best circumstances, these issues are tough. They're lengthy and complicated, and they cause projects to move through the queue slower than kind of everybody would like. Under the worst scenarios, these issues are in conflict with each other, and they cause projects really to get bogged down and grind to a halt. So that's why it's important to understand kind of what's going on in the minds of regulators. By doing so, maybe you'll have a little sympathy or empathy with them, but more importantly, you'll have a chance to work and build a relationship that will help move things along. And that's really our goal here, is to build that relationship that gets you the best opportunity for a fast and successful permit project or resolution to noncompliance, whatever it might be.
And
I'll just jump in. Sorry, Lance.
No, go ahead.
Let me just jump in from the client side and say that if you haven't worked with the agency much, this might sound like a pipe dream, but I'm here to tell you that it's very, very possible to have a good relationship with your regulator. And this point here of understanding their perspective is really important, because like Jeff is saying, it does give you some empathy to their situation, and also gives you a chance to then share your perspective and help them understand your perspective and what your end goal is. So I think that's a really important point here.
Yeah, I was just going to add, probably, Jeff, you probably got this a lot too, is that you didn't write these regulations, and you're just trying to do a job too. And sometimes you you can be just as frustrated with changes as they are sometimes too. And that's the other thing; it always changes, right? So I'm sure that's a
absolutely. Now, yeah, I mean, I think most of us, if you've worked with local, state, or federal agencies, you know that rules and regulations change. They change regularly on a regular basis, but the application and the way that an individual person or agency interprets and puts those or manifests those rules or regulations or laws into best practices can really change, and that's reflected often in guidance or fact sheets that local, state, and federal agencies put out that are meant to be helpful, but oftentimes as they change, they cause confusion and some frustration, and things are different. And when those things get different, your project that you worked on 2 years ago, your permitting project, now has another layer that the agency is asking for you to answer, questions that you'll have to answer before they're prepared to move forward with the permit. So it is a constant area of flux and change.
Excellent.
So next, our next slide, we want to talk a little bit about those differences between local, state, and federal agencies. There are differences, and those of you that worked at the local level, and those of you that worked with the feds, whether it's EPA or the land managers or whatever it might be, you've noticed these things, and some of them are just specific to personalities of the people you're specifically working with. But in general, these agencies view you as a regulated party, a business, an individual, or a municipality quite differently. And I always like to say that the farther you are away from your site, if you're dealing with somebody in Chicago or at say EPA headquarters in Washington, the less you'll have a chance to influence that decision. Now, that does not mean that you shouldn't be working to build those relationships. It just means that your expectations might need to be adjusted a bit, because again, the farther away, the more they're less focused on the needs of your specific project, and the less they're influenced by some of the factors that are going along and around your project at the local level. So with that in mind, as you look at local agencies, this is townships, cities, and counties. They're very unique in the operation and highly subject to local influences. One neighbor next door thinking about your business, worried about emissions or discharges, can quickly send local permitting kind of off the rails. You might be attending a number of public city meetings or county meetings, and you might get some questions, a lot of questions about how your particular project is going to make sure it protects human health and the environment. As I say here, decision processes may be less defined, and certainly not in every situation, but are oftentimes more flexible than you would see maybe at the state or federal level. So our advice, my experience with this is that because it can be more flexible and you have an opportunity to influence the decision, it's important to engage with the local regulators as soon as you can. When you are thinking about a project and you need to be working on that project as soon as possible, you'll want to seek out those influencers and get them to understand your project so they can be an advocate for your project. And sometimes the best person to talk to is not the mayor or the city council member. It might be the zoning office personnel. So find out who those influencers are and make sure you're connecting with them in productive ways.
Jeff, do you find that they're easier to work with or more preferable to work with, considering that that's their backyard too? Is that, that they have a more vested interest in your project? Or
I would say, Lance, it kind of depends on who it is and who else is whispering in their ear. It's too simple to sort of say, yeah, that they're in favor of your project. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but it certainly is one of those places where if you identify those influencers early and often, give them good and current and updated information and stay connected, again, it'll be your best chance of having the best possible outcome.
I think real quick on local agencies, something I've seen through a bunch of public meetings, the motions tend to run a little hotter, I think, on the local level. Obviously, they do federal and state as well, but I think understanding that and being prepared for, your actual neighbors speaking out against your operation, and then just the kind of situation, that can be a really tough situation to be in. So understanding that, expecting that. And this shouldn't have to be said, but I've seen the opposite, honestly, from some, unfortunately, from some industrial actors or people. Be respectful of your neighbors. I remember a long time ago, and I know people are a lot more aware now, but I remember seeing someone celebrate an industry win in front of the neighbors. And that stood out to me as a fellow industry person. Is something obviously never to do, but to keep in mind and realize that there's maybe some misguided passion, but passion out there, and to understand what you're walking into.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jennifer. I think the local folks are under a tremendous amount of pressure because they're all living there, right? You're probably all living within a few miles of this facility, and the neighbor that didn't like the project is living next door to the neighbor or across town from the neighbor that really did. And so all those passionate feelings come out quite quickly, and everyone knows where everyone else lives. So people aren't afraid to go and knock on doors, and I think that can be an interesting dynamic and somewhat unique for local regulatory folks. So next, state agencies. I've had, this is where I work, so I know this group well. Oftentimes, I think the folks perceive the state agencies as being kind of distant from the project. They're away from, in Minnesota, everything's happening in St. Paul. So if you're outstate Minnesota, it feels like they're a long ways away. And then therefore less subject to, the benefits of a personal relationship and less influenced by a phone call or an email or something like that. And I'll tell you, my experience is that Minnesotans and the state agencies that work for Minnesotans feel a deep commitment to what's happening across the state. They want that project to go forward. They're working towards yes on getting permits issued. And because they really do want to do a good job, and they care deeply about the success kind of going forward. So in that sense, that first bullet point, I always think about state agencies as being much more like the locals than the feds. The feds seem like a long ways away, and they are. And they're more process driven. They've got a specific job to do, whereas the state, while they do have a process to follow, can be influenced more readily than the feds. The state agencies are striving for balance. This is kind of unique in that sense, in that they're trying to follow the regulations, whether they're state regs or Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, and they're also trying to support jobs growth in business at a local level. So all these things are critically important, and this balance is sometimes a tough one to achieve. We used to say that if no one was happy with us at the state, then we probably did our job. We found the sweet spot, so to speak, and that's not a satisfying place to be for most state employees. I was always frustrated with that, and I know permit writers and compliance folks, they're trying to make people happy and do a good job. So knowing that everybody is maybe upset with them or not exactly pleased with the outcome can be a point of frustration, which is, again, why you'll want to invest that time to make sure that they understand kind of what's going on, and they can best support you as you think about your project going forward. Transparency and consistencies are critical for state agency folks. Everyone's looking at them, especially these days where audits are happening, data practices requests are common. I think as I recall at the MPCA, we got sometimes over 800 data requests, a week. So it was a lot of people that were looking to understand and ensure that we are being transparent and consistent. At the state level, processes are challenging and they're always changing. I mentioned that before. And again, just driving home that point that a positive relationship with your specific regulator, your permit writer, your compliance person, and the teams that support them can really have a very positive outcome.
And I'll just echo that from a Texas perspective and from a client perspective. Honestly, we see the same types of goals from our Texas regulators. Obviously, they are upholding the rules and trying to help us be in compliance, but I like Jeff's phrase, working towards yes or striving for yes. That's the same thing in Texas. And honestly, Louisiana, Oklahoma, the majority of the states where we operate.
I'll say one unique thing about Minnesota too is, and maybe this is more about the state agencies, because they're both doing the compliance enforcement side of things as well as the permitting side of things. You know, that being in compliance with your permit really is absolutely critical. Being in non-compliance puts you at a disadvantage. The state is reluctant to work on your permit and can't issue a permit if there's non-compliance at your facility. So I'll make a pitch here for making sure that you are doing necessary audits, that you're reviewing your compliance status with the agency, and that you are doing all you can to be in compliance or return to compliance if you're not. This kind of good compliance rating also has a very positive relationship with the regulators. Compliance is the goal for most state agencies, and they take that seriously. So involve the state agencies early on in your process, and it'll help them identify and reduce your overall regulatory burden later on. So federal agencies, these folks, you know, I work a lot with EPA, and I often enjoy those folks, but as I said, it's a tough group. They are generally more challenging than state or local agencies. If they are interested in your particular facility, usually that's not a good thing. They're not there to provide a ton of assistance. They're there because maybe there was a complaint or non-compliance raised to a level that got their interest, and so it's a tougher group to work with and communicate with. They just are generally less communicative than state or local agencies would be, and that kind of makes sense because they're further away and have really specific goals in mind. You know, it doesn't mean you shouldn't, again, connect with them regularly, find a way to track down who your compliance person is, and be open and communicate more than you think you probably ought to. That will help them get a general sense about your commitment to solving whatever problem might be facing you.
Yeah, I know
it's important here. Oh, go ahead, Jennifer.
I was going to jump in real quick on that, because you're right. It does seem like they're more closed off and distant, further away. They're in DC, even though, of course, we know they're EPA regions. We have had success reaching out to specific individuals in specific areas and building that relationship. And there are a few EPA connections that we have where we actually can call and ask questions kind of like we would a state agency and kind of get some help on the compliance side. So just as to Jeff's point, it does depend on the person, but it also depends on your effort, the effort you put into building that relationship.
Yeah, no, and a couple of extra points. I think that's great, Jennifer. A couple of extra points here that I want to hit is, you know, generally EPA does not randomly an interest in your particular facility. They're there, again, for a reason. And if you have a sense that they're interested in your facility, it's in your best interest to find out why as soon as you possibly can. And hopefully, if you've built that good relationship with them in the past, they will be a little more proactive, and tracking down that reason why they're connecting with you or interested in your facility will be easier. So keep that in mind. I always say that it's probably critical for you to show your work for federal agencies, and by that I mean keeping good track of compliance requirements, submitting reports on time, make sure they're complete. You know, if you're doing operational testing, that you've got that in a place that's easily accessible and understandable. just in terms of federal agencies, they're looking at very closely at the data, at the actual situations that are going on. They're looking at permit conditions. They're diving down into the details, and those details are important to them. Important to other folks too, but EPA takes a particularly rigorous look at those details. So make sure you're showing your work. Another thing to be aware of when it comes to federal agencies is that they are programmatically more segregated than maybe the state or the locals. For sure, the locals. At the state level, you've got, at least at the MPCA, we had a group of folks that did air permit writing. We had folks that were connected with them that were doing air compliance and enforcement. All those folks kind of work in the same division, so they're very much connected. They sit by one another, and they work closely with one another. You'll not find that level of connectedness before at federal agencies. They might be in different floors, different buildings, and it's often the case that the people that are working on a permit are not communicating with the folks that are doing compliance review for your particular facility, and they are not connected with the folks that are doing compliance and enforcement. Those are three oftentimes very separate groups of folks. So as you're thinking about building those relationships, keep in mind that it's probably not a single phone call that you'll need to make, or an email, or a meeting request. You'll want to be thinking about these often more segregated groups to make sure that you are understanding where they fit in, and if they are talking to each other, because if they're not, the chance for things to go wrong, and by wrong I mean delay projects, enforcement actions that are confusing, the chance of that for those things to go wrong kind of increases. So make sure you're understanding the connections between the federal agency staff. And then finally, understand that for the most part, EPA's got a really specific job to do. They defer most of the work to the state agencies. So yep, they've got Clean Water Act and Clean Air Act and RCRA requirements that are kind of driving things at the federal level. But for the most part, federal agencies will want to defer to the state agencies to do the permitting, to do the compliance inspections, to do the enforcement, and the state agencies will be providing that information to the federal agencies throughout the year or at the end of the year, whatever it might be. So it's important to know, again, if a federal person is looking at your facility, that's out of the ordinary. That would not be a normal thing, and it's in your best interest to track down why that's happening. But maybe the more important message here is, because the states have sort of priority, they're the people doing most of the work, that they can also be an advocate for you. That they've got relationships with the federal agencies that are unique, and things that the federal folks will not tell you, the state folks might. And so, take advantage of that good relationship you have with the state regulators and leverage that towards resolving whatever issues might be happening at the federal level. Okay, so engagement plan. I think this was in the first slide, and there might be some confusion about what we mean by engagement plan. And I am actually we're talking about actually doing a plan, and that means, pen to paper, typing on the keyboard, and the ultimate goal, the reason you do this is not to put a plan together. Putting a plan together is helpful, but it really is a way to ensure that your intent and driving your commitment to having a good personal relationship and developing that relationship with these regulatory folks kind of going forward. And I've got a kind of a definition of an engagement plan there on this slide. And an intentional commitment by you, and by you, I mean you, your staff, your team, your leadership, your consultants. The you is kind of the broad group that might have a chance to interact with regulatory folks. It probably should not just be a single person. There are just too many people to think about and places to engage. So it's got to be a team effort. We'll talk about shortly kind of what that engagement plan is focused on. But I think the thing I want to drive home here is that it's an investment in a future relationship, and that's probably maybe some of the key words here. You're investing in a long-term positive relationship. If the first phone call you're making is 2 months before you're intending to break ground on a brand new construction project to the state agencies for a permit, you're already behind. That it will probably not be a positive relationship. That's going to be frustrating for you, and it's going to be frustrating for the state agencies and probably the local and federal folks too if they're involved. So what we're talking about here is an ongoing, consistent, proactive effort on your part to build that relationship out. And I think one of the things to keep in mind is that too often, this is my experience working for the state, too often the state would get notified of a great project, and they love the project. The state is, in Minnesota, we're all about jobs, growth, and business, but they hear about it way too late. And maybe we hear about it first when the application comes in. And I'll tell you right now, that's way too late, and you're missing opportunities to have the state agencies, one, plan for your project, for the chance to assign a permit writer that can work on your permit, for instance. They want to find the best permit writer for your particular project. That is advantageous to the state to find someone who maybe knows your project, maybe worked on it 5 years ago. If they can arrange their schedule to get you at the right time, that's ideal for you and for them. The other issue is, or thing to think about is state agencies help reduce regulatory burden. By that I mean the continue your compliance agreement that cause you to have to spend time and money to either comply with or upgrade to that. State agencies, they see all kinds of permits. They work with regulators and projects across the state or region. They often have some great insight into being able to help you reduce your regulatory burden and get you from one kind of to another kind of permit, maybe one that is simpler and cheaper and faster, but that only happens when they're brought in early and help you think through some of those. And that things like pollution control, boxes. The state agencies will help you think through those options, those operational questions, and maybe have some ideas about what you could do differently that would reduce that that regulatory burden overall, as well as speed things up. So that's a great reason for you to think proactively and have the kind of conversations and relationships early on that will get you again into the best opportunity for success.
And I just want to jump in. I know we were having a little technical difficulties. Jeff, you're cutting in and out.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. But I did want to ask a question. How often do you find it, like, why they don't engage the agencies early enough? Is it just that they didn't want to, or is there just a mindset is like they just put it off because the mindset is they're my enemy? And should that mindset be, or what should we do to kind of clear that up?
Yeah, I think there's a number of reasons why that's the case. One is simply people aren't thinking about it. They got a project, they know they need to submit an application, and for a lot of folks, it's just the process says submit an application by this date, and then that's a place where they see the starting line in terms of engagement with regulators. And again, I'll tell you that the state agencies want to engage with you as soon as possible. They want to have that pre-construction meeting, that pre-permitting meeting, and it's really very important for them to be able to have that kind of conversation again, so they can plan and give you some expectations around timing and costs and the kinds of permits that'll be necessary.
So
the other reason I think is also, as you said, Lance, that people are just fearful of engaging with the regulators too early. You know, no one sees them necessarily as partners in the process. It's more of a speed bump in the road of getting this project built. So I think people just are reluctant to work with regulators too quickly. A little bit of fear and frustration. Maybe you had some bad experiences in the past. So these reasons are challenging.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot on the opposite side. Fear is a big one for sure. Operators, a lot, or operations, I mean, tends to have some fear around that, just because even the environmental department can be, you know, the big bad wolf. I remember I was called that environmental girl several times at my last company. But I think it's important, and that's the point of this plan, right, is to get that conversation going internally and help people understand that, yes, the regulator is on, well, they're going to work with us to get the permit that we need and to kind of help control that fear, reduce that fear.
So we're talking about an engagement plan, and these are some of the goals of that plan. And again, the plan is on paper. I think that's ideal. Doesn't necessarily need to be, but this is how you will be intentional and proactive in reaching out to regulators. So here's some of the things that you can expect if you're doing this well. You'll be able to set and clarify project and relationship benchmarks with regulators, which again, we just talked about the need for doing that and how that can really be helpful in helping them craft a plan and put process flow charts or Gantt charts together that will help you better understand help everybody understand what your overall goal is and how these processes and these conversations can fit into that goal. Managing expectations I think is really important. Again, involving regulators in that process early. You might be thinking this is a 6-month project, and in reality, when you engage with the permitting folks at the state agency, they're going to tell you, nope, this is a year-long project. That's going to take us that long for these reasons. And it's good to know that right away, right? It's critical as you're thinking about having your construction crews out on site. As you're thinking through in Minnesota, we got a fun thing called winter, where the construction season essentially stops. So up here, we need to think about, and regulated parties, businesses and industries need to think about what you can and can't do in the winter. So timing is really, really important. And that's state agencies through that early interaction can help you manage those and understand those expectations for construction schedules. You're hoping to build open and honest communications. This is something I know probably causes some heartache out there and a little bit of fear. How much information do you want to have, and how much you want to provide to your regulator? And I'll tell you that it's a risk worth taking. Opening yourself up to those sorts of conversations and being personal and honest with your regulator is really important. I certainly always appreciated when I had a good relationship with, you know, company X or president or CEO Y, that they felt like they could call me when I was working for the state, and I would help them better understand and help them resolve that issue. That doesn't have to happen with the director at the MPCA. It can happen with the managers, with the supervisors, and with the staff. And I really encourage you to think about that kind of personal relationship with them, because in my experience, it really has been something that has paid off and worth the effort.
That makes a lot of sense. You know, one of the things that being open could lead to is actually highlighting a regulation or rule that you might not realize is going to apply to your project. I know one of the ones that I can think of is really gets down to the local regulations, sometimes not even environmental, but you don't want to get a month away from breaking ground and realize that you didn't talk to any of the zoning or planning or other committees at the local level, just because you didn't make your plan, you didn't talk internally and figure out what needed to happen, and you weren't open and honest with your regulators.
Yep, and if you're doing that, I'll tell you that there's a couple of outcomes that, and sort of the last two bullet points here that are really powerful. One is the resolution of conflict, and anybody who's worked on a permitting project or is in the middle of a compliance issue trying to resolve that knows that there is conflict. There's tension, there's conflict. People are on edge, emotions are high, passions are high. Good relationships really help to resolve those as quickly as it possibly can get resolved. If you're building trust, if you have trust, if the regulator has trust with you, if you have that trust in them, you can begin to work through these issues in a less confrontational way. And I think I certainly have been involved in negotiating consent decrees and stipulation agreements, as well as large permits. And it's great to be able to say in those situations that I can be honest with those folks, and they can be honest with me about things that they're frustrated with and what their bottom line is. You know, negotiations all go faster when everybody's willing to think through the way to compromise to a positive outcome. So again, another reason why it's worth the investment in building those positive relationships. And I'll be honest here, it's going to be a little one-sided. The effort will have to begin with you as a regulated party, as a business, industry, municipality, or individual. That's where it's going to start. And in most cases, I will say that the agency staff, the person you're building that relationship with, might be a little surprised because it doesn't happen a lot. And I'll tell you that's unfortunate. It should happen more, because most agency staff, whether at the state, local, or federal level, want that kind of communication, want that kind of relationship. They're just reluctant to begin that. And so this is going to seem a little one-sided. We'll talk about this a little bit later on in the conversation here, but it's going to seem a little one-sided in the beginning. So, get comfortable with that, because again, it'll pay off for you later on. So next, what are the kind of things that we're looking for in an engagement plan? What are the questions you want to ask? This is a plan. You want to think about who's on the team, and again, this is a team effort from your side. It could be I've seen it work well as presidents and CEOs being the primary contact. It could be a facility manager. It could be your EHS person. It could be an operator at your particular wastewater plant, if that's the case. It could be your consultant. There are people that will, I think, as you look through your particular situation and think about the people that have these skills, figure out who is going to be on that team of folks that will think through the engagement plan and be the primary contacts with the regulators. Again, second bullet point, who is it? At what level? What are you shooting for? And what kind of skills do they need that maybe they don't have right now? And what's their mindset going into implementing that engagement plan? Next, how will the communication flow? At what frequency? This is a little bit. It's a little bit sort of a. There's no right answer here. You'll need to figure out as you begin reaching out and connecting and building relationships. You will quickly figure out what the level of communication needs are. Some regulators will want to have weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual conversations. If a project's going on, I know a lot of permit writers love to have weekly meetings just to talk about where you're at. But that's a kind of a give and take. I think the message here is you need to start something. There has to be some frequency by which you will circle back. Again, our goal here is to think not only about this particular project in the moment, but what's going to happen 2 years from now when you've got that next construction project in the queue. What's going to happen 5 years from now when your air permit or water permit expires, you need to reissue it. You are building that relationship so that it's a long-term relationship and there won't be any surprises, or you're going to minimize surprises into the future. So there's no right answer here. The frequency is going to be something you'll discover as you begin to reach out and connect with your regulators. And then finally, what are your goals? Is there a feedback loop? Is there a way to measure the success of this? It's a little more it's a little more art than science in these situations. But I always found that it's always nice to understand what the regulators want to have in terms of communication and what fits their particular need, and then work towards an overall goal. It might be issuing a permit. It might be causing a little bit some better relationships. It might be resolving noncompliance. But how will you know when you're successful? So thinking through those communication loops and feedback loops will be really, really important. So no plan, no communication is without risks, right? Challenges and risks. So keep in mind that regulatory staff do and may change. You might have invested a relationship with a water permit writer for 4 years and they leave or they retire. Maybe you spent a year with them and they up and left and are now a consultant. I think that can be frustrating. It feels like you've wasted time setting that relationship up. I would say that it's not wasted time. It's well invested time, because you don't know when you might see them again. Oftentimes, a good permit writer, a good compliance person, a good staff person becomes a really good supervisor, manager, director. Moves from a tech role to a leadership role. And in that situation, your relationship, your positive experience with them will pay off probably even more, because they now are in a leadership role and can have a little bit more influence across the program. So expect that to change, and expect because that's going to change, your plan will need to move along with it or be adjusted to address more people that you are now engaging with. And I said this before, but it may not be reciprocated or fully appreciated, especially early on. I'll tell you that most permit writers and compliance staff and tech staff, inspectors, they will be a little bit surprised at your efforts to build that relationship. Not that they don't want them, not that they don't really appreciate them, but it's just so uncommon that that your actions, your specific actions to kind of build that relationship, will be surprise to them over when you first do it. But over time, you will build some great relationships. I started at the MPCA as a wastewater inspector, and I still have a ton of friends and acquaintances and relationships with the people that I built good relationships with from the municipalities and industries I worked with over the years. And I appreciate them not only because of the work they do, but also because I know them well, and we go on fishing trips, and we connect. Our families get together. So it's a pretty exciting and powerful relationship. So I encourage you to think about those benefits. One of the things that probably will be a little unique here is and to understand that this kind of effort is not free. You're thinking about budgets, you're thinking about putting together project plans and how much you're going to spend on each of these efforts, whether it's pollution control equipment, clearing and grubbing, whatever it might be. Probably this idea of spending time and money to engage with the regulatory agencies is not in your budget. But I'd suggest that maybe you should make a little room for that to happen. Again, for the benefits that we've discussed already. It's not free. You're going to spend time and money doing this kind of stuff. But again, my experience is it really does pay off. And then finally, there are no guarantees. It doesn't, even if you have a good relationship with your compliance person, there still might be a civil penalty when there's non-compliance. The permit still might take longer than you'd like. In fact, it probably will. Everyone's hoping to get permits done very, very quickly, but sometimes for factors that are outside the control of the regulators and of you, such as an interest during public notice of an environmental group, or maybe the tribal nations are interested in your project, it'll take longer than it will. So it doesn't mean that you're going to have guaranteed success going forward, but again, it puts you in the best possible place to better understand what risks are before you, as well as a chance to influence how that project plays out over time.
And Jeff, just so we're clear, it's not free. We're not talking about bribes, right?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No, right on, Liz. No, this is just no, this is really just about understanding the take. You got to make some phone calls and indicating staff to reach out to regulators to build that relationship it seems like it's an add-on, and so it's just about committing time and resources.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that has a cost. So that's about it. Yes, bribes are not good. No state agency is going to take that, and don't offer them.
Okay.
That's my.
Or you're not recommending bribing.
Yes.
I've never seen that work. I personally have never received a bribe.
It's not free. There's no guarantee. I just sound a lot like, I'm just kidding. All right. Moving on.
Good point. Good caution. Okay, so now we wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about the specifically around permitting and oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead of the slide.
Did I go too far? My bad.
No.
Okay.
You need to go.
You're on the right one. Keep going.
Go one more.
There we go.
Yep.
Sorry, my computer went.
That's one. There we go.
Crazy on me.
Yeah. So we want to spend a couple minutes about just focusing on the topic that you're probably, if you're a regulated entity, a regulated party, you're probably most engaging with the regulators on permitting or enforcement issues. So we want to spend a couple of moments just specifically talking about some options there and some what we think to be sort of best practices as you are considering working on permit or compliance issues with your local, state, or federal regulators. So again, we mentioned this in the beginning. These folks, permit writers, are working from a different perspective than you. It doesn't mean they don't care about your project. They want to get it done. They want to get it done quickly. But they're, again, trying to anticipate and manage political, public, regulatory, and process questions. And again, from a outsider's perspective, it can feel like the permitting agencies are dragging their feet, and sometimes on purpose. But often these are they're trying to work through these issues, anticipate these issues, so that your project at the end, during public notice, has the best chance of getting through. They're trying to figure out these.
Jennifer, are you there?
I am here.
I think we might have just lost him.
We might have just lost him. I'll step in here while he's getting his sound back and talk about the second bullet here, because I know we really wanted to highlight this point that regulators are not going to be necessarily experts on your business. They're experts in reading and interpreting regulations and keeping up with the various regulations as they come down and how to apply them. But they really do expect you as industry to kind of be the advocate for your operations. I have a really good example of this that I really appreciated with the TCEQ a few years ago when the concrete batch plant air permit was up for not renewal, but they're making some adjustments to it. The TCEQ had meetings with industry, and I highly, highly recommend going to these public meetings and interacting with the regulators, because what they were trying to do is understand how the plants worked, down to the air pollution control equipment, which plants have, for example, a curtain around their load point, just to get real technical and into the details. So they took the information that we gave them and they used that to better do the protectiveness calculations, so that they were still following the rules, but they were also tailoring the permit to the actual operation. So it was a great example of working with the regulators to help them understand our business, and then they took that and made sure the new permit followed all the necessary regulations. Let's see if Jeff's back.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, and can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. My apologies, I got kicked out of the system.
And great job, Jennifer, picking that up. That was seamless. Good job.
Yeah, awesome. So we were talking about permitting and enforcement resolution. Again, states are operating and federal and locals are operating from a slightly different perspective than you. And the next point I think is really, really critical. And I think this is a place where regulated parties, businesses, industry really are, it's important to understand that permit writers and compliance people are experts on the regulation. They are not experts in your facility or how it operates. I think a lot of folks believe that when they submit an application, you're going to get somebody who is an engineer who has detailed knowledge about how your facility operates. And that just simply is not the case. We spend all our time, the agency spends its time training people in regulation and process, and that's about as much as they can get into their heads. So to that point, invite them in, help them understand your process, invite them over to do an inspection a couple of times, let them ask questions. It really is helpful for people to see how your process works, for them to better understand how they can write a permit or resolve a non-compliance issue if they better understand it. In the absence of that, they'll be filling in the gaps and they might not have that right. So understand that they're regulatory experts, not project or facility experts, and that your effort should be in making sure that they do understand that. A lot of folks, if they've been a permit writer for a long time, are amazing technical folks. They've just seen everything, and it's great when you get that kind of permit writer. Oftentimes you will not, but if you get a senior permit writer, again, we talked about reducing your regulatory burden, building that relationship with them and bringing them in early and proactively around projects. They will have some insight for you and can provide some ways and opportunities to reduce your regulatory burden. So I encourage you to do that and think through that carefully.
All right, we are running a little bit out of time, but I just wanted to give you guys a heads up.
Yeah. So here's some best management practices, I think, as you're thinking through building that relationships and connecting with regulatory agencies. Understand that there's a whole team of people working at the state or at the locals or at the federal level. It's not just one person. So we always say identify the entire team. You might know who your permit writer is. You may not know who your review engineer is. There might be a hydrologist, soil scientist, compliance person, all assigned to your project. So as you get into a particular project, ask the right questions, figure out who's on the team, and begin to build those relationships across the team. Understand their style. This is really important in that, these are individuals. Again, these are people that have some strong feelings and want to be worked with in a particular way. That, find out how they want to. Do they want to get information to you and from you in a big lump sum? Is it more an iterative process? Do they like face-to-face meetings? Are video conferences okay? Do they want to do inspections? Do they want to be on the site every few months, or do they prefer to work from the office? These are all really, really important questions that get to an understanding of their particular style. That third bullet point is really, really important. I want to highlight that here. Too often, and this is my experience at the state, within a couple of weeks of working with a state regulator, they want to escalate. I didn't like what someone said. I think they're moving too slow. Let's call the supervisor. Let's call the commissioner. Let's call the governor. Let's call legislators. There are times and places for that. Sometimes that can be a very effective tool. But I'll tell you, as a hint, it's almost never when you think it is. It's never as soon as you think it is. And so you want to be thoughtful and careful about how you you escalate inside regulatory agencies to try to get what you want. Maybe you're feeling like things are moving too slow, or a perception that things aren't working well. But think carefully about that. And then finally, again, we've talked about this a number of times. This is an investment in that relationship. It's a long-term investment. So be thinking through how you will continue to engage with people even after your project is finished. So next, get the right support. You need a plumber, you get a plumber. You need an electrician, you get an electrician. Finding the right people that can help you accomplish these tasks is always very important. If you're new to the game of, you need a brand new permit, and you're thinking about consultants, make sure you're thinking about the right consultants, not just technical expertise, ISO, science, whatever they might be. Think about finding consultants and getting support from people that know how to have positive relationships and have a proven track record to help leapfrog you a project into the place where you're having really conversations, right? Understand the history with their agencies. Understand that the consultants they want to understand, a good one will want to understand only what you want, but will also be asking questions about your company's values. Again, what's your risk tolerance? How aggressive like them be with the regulators? What's your desired future relationships? They'll be able to help you manage and expectations to get you to a sense that it's a reasonable outcome, it's a fair outcome. Let's say when you're negotiating a compliance agreement or a penalty with state agencies or a regulatory agency. And oftentimes a good consultant can be your best spokesperson and a great point of contact. They're there to help you, and again, hopefully they've got good relationships already, and they can just build on and being a liaison between you and your regulatory agency.
Real quick, but since I know we're running out of time, I just wanted to point out that one of a really great resource is industry-specific trade groups. Not only are you talking to people who are in the same boat as you, might have the same types of permit issues. A lot of times, former agency personnel will start to join those. I know that's happened recently in some of the ones I've gone to, and they can help either make connections or kind of show to help you figure out where to go when you're talking about permitting and other things.
So final thoughts, again, hopefully this has helped you understand some of the insight and to our regulatory agencies and staff's thinking. Hopefully this has helped you understand differences between state, local, and federal agencies. Hopefully this has helped think about how you put together a plan with your team, and then and also consider how you find the right partners. Again, maybe just as a wrap up, this is an investment, and it'll take some time and some effort on your part. You'll need to be flexible in the conversation. Things change and people change, and one size does not fit all, so be flexible there. And remember that oftentimes when you're working with regulatory agencies, it's less about the strength of your legal arguments and more about legal and technical arguments, and more about your reasonableness and tone. And I know that sounds it feels a little soft, and maybe it feels like it shouldn't be, but as I said, as we started kind of this conversation, these are people that are trying to work hard. They've got a job to do. They want to be respected. They want to build trust. They want to trust you. And sometimes it's a little more art and a little less science. And you need to understand those personalities for you to have the best chance for having a really positive outcome. So with that, I will end. And Lance, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys both for great information, and I know that it takes a lot of time to do these webinars, and you did a great job. And if you have any questions, and I do have a question, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the webinar, and then if anybody wants to get off, I'm going to end the recording, and then we can stay on a few minutes for the question. So if you people want to stay on for the question, that's great, or maybe ask a few more. But here's Jennifer and Jeff's contact information. Be happy to answer your questions. Our next webinar is February 25th, Wading Through the Swamp. So it's going to be wetlands, endangered species, and environmental assessments. And so that one's going to be with Daniel DeJudy and Brady Turk. So it's going to be some great information. Thank you, Jennifer and Jeff, for your time today, and really appreciate you giving us all this great information.
Thanks, Lance.
Thank you.